Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is the 15th episode of the summary of the Quran, and tonight we are going to do three surahs: Taha, Al-Anbiya, and Al-Hajj. Two of these surahs, Taha and Al-Anbiya, are forming a pair, and Surah Al-Hajj forms a pair with Surah Al-Mu'minun, which we'll do tomorrow, inshallah. Surah Taha and Surah Al-Anbiya both are dealing with the same theme as has been the case with most surahs of this group of surahs, which is to give stern warning to the people who are rejecting God's message and to give good news to those who believed and stayed firm, steadfast with the decision that they had taken. The only difference is that we find that, as distinct from most other surahs of the group, Surah Taha is focusing more directly on the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, and guiding and directing him to continue to follow the guidance that he's receiving from God, and it's done through the narration of the story of Moses, Musa alayhi salam. While in the case of Surah Al-Anbiya, the Quran is telling the people of Quraysh, the leadership, that their rope is getting tightened, and the punishment is just around the corner. So either mend your ways or be prepared for the ultimate consequences. We begin with Surah Taha first. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Taha. So Taha, like many other surahs, begin with disjointed letters, huruf muqattat. This surah too begins with these letters. But what is interesting is what I want to just briefly point out. Surah Taha, then we have Surah Tasin, we have Tasin Mim. Two surahs beginning with Tasin Mim. So at least four surahs which have this letter Ta. If you look at this letter Ta, it would give you a picture of a snake whose most part is settled in the ground. Some part has been raised up towards the sky and the environment. And you look at the picture and it's similar to the picture of Ta. The letters in the earlier languages that are ancient, used to reflect one object or another, like is the case with Chinese language, I'm informed. So the letter Taha had to do with snake, serpent. Surahs beginning with Ta all have the story of Musa alayhi salam, and all stories of Musa alayhi salam have the mention of snake, serpent. So there is a link. Taha ma anzalna alayka al-Qur'ana litashqa. We have not sent down the Quran to you, O Prophet, to distress you. That's not what the purpose is. Illa tazkiratan liman yakhsha, except as a reminder for those who fear God. So these are the words of comfort for the Prophet, that the idea is to make you let others know what the truth is and to remind them. The idea is not to make you feel difficult, distressed. Then the surah goes on to describe some part of the story of Musa alayhi salam in some detail. And it says that when Moses met God Almighty for the first time, God said to him, Innani anallahu la ilaha illa ana. I am the God. There is no deity except me. Wa aqimis salata li zikri. And you establish prayer for my remembrance, for being reminded about me. So, well, before that, the Almighty has also mentioned that He has kept away the judgment day from observation so that He may test people, and then moves on to say that this prayer is meant for remembering God. And that's what we must always keep in mind while we are praying. Every ritual, every religious expectation has a reason behind it, a purpose, a goal that needs to be achieved. Like in the case of fasting, the Almighty says, He has prescribed fasting for you, la'allakum tattaqun, so that you may become God conscious. Likewise, when we are praying, the Almighty says that this great worship is meant to remember God, to be reminded of Him. So we should always understand what we are saying in our prayers, and we should remember God as much as is possible through His attributes, through His message. Then we are informed that when Musa alayhi salam was asked to go to Pharaoh and his people and to tell them that you've come with his message, he felt nervous and he prayed to the Almighty to remove his nervousness. He said, Rabbi shrah li sadri, my Lord, expand my chest, that is, make me feel comfortable in my heart. Wayassir li amri, and make my task easy for me. Wahlul uqdatam min lisani, and untie the knot from my tongue, that is, make my speech more flowing, fluent. Yafqahu qawli, so that they might understand my speech. Obviously, it helps a great deal if there is somebody who is able to express himself freely with a flowing expression. Musa alayhi salam felt that now that this job has been assigned to him, it's important that he should do the task effectively. Verses 41 to 44 tell us that the Almighty is addressing Musa alayhi salam and telling him, Vastanatuka li nafsi, I have made you specially for myself. That's indeed a great privilege that the Almighty conferred upon Musa alayhi salam, and it's a great remark about a great servant of the Almighty, that he was made specially for God's tasks. The life that he went through, the experiences that he faced, were all meant to make sure that he does the task that the Almighty would assign him effectively, as best as is possible. Izhab anta wa akhuka, go you with your brother, biayati, with my verses, wala taniya fi zikri, and do not slacken in remembering me. Izhaba ila Firaun, go to Pharaoh, innahu tagha, he has transgressed. Faqula lahu qawlan layyina, but say to him words of politeness. Talk to him politely. He has transgressed. He is arrogant. He has gone beyond limits of acceptability while dealing with matters that have got to do with morality and with God. And yet, we are asking you, the great Prophet Musa and his brother Harun alayhimus salam, that when you talk to him politely. That's what the instructions of the Almighty are. To all those people who deliver God's message, do it politely, or else, for God's sake, don't do it, because God's message has to be delivered effectively. لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى, you never know. He might be reminded or might fear God. So try as best as you can. So the story goes on, and we find that the Almighty is telling us that Moses comes back after having met God. And despite the fact that Musa alayhi salam himself was present and his brother was present, and yet an entire nation was deceived by a person on the plea that he had apparently some kind of a spiritual experience. These people, deceivers, are there all the while, and there are people, naive, vulnerable people who fall prey to what they are telling them. So Musa alayhi salam, he came and asked this man, Samri, who created a calf and somehow caused some kind of sound coming from it, which impressed people, and they started worshipping it. So when Musa alayhi salam finally confronted him and asked him, Ma khatbuka ya Samriyu, what was the matter with you, Samri? What happened? What did you do? He said, Qala basurtu bima lam yapsuru. I saw what they didn't see. So I took a handful of dust from the track of the angel and threw it. And thus my inner self suggested to me, as vague as these people can be, that he said something which people somehow got impressed with, as if he had the knowledge of the unseen world. He saw some angel and it was something very remarkable and sacred. So he was completely gotten rid of. But the fact of the matter is that despite the presence of two great prophets, this evil deceiver was able to deceive a whole nation. We move on to the next surah, Surah Al-Anbiya, wherein at the very beginning the Almighty is telling the people of Quraysh, as I said in the introduction, that your days are numbered. If you're not going to correct yourself, then the Almighty's promised punishment is going to come very soon. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. The time of their accountability has come close while they are still heedless to the message, turning away. That's what they are doing. No new reminder comes to them except that they listen to it while playing and ignoring it. So they are being told that this attitude of theirs is not going to help them. Their hearts are unattentive, and these unjust people conceal their private conversation. What is this man except a human like you? So will you fall into magic with open eyes? That's the way they would talk about this message, in an insulting way, ignoring it, and that's what people who reject messengers do, and they ultimately pay for it because they are punished and eliminated from the face of this earth. The Almighty goes on to mention in verses 16 and 17 something important. He says, وَمَا خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاءَ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا لَاعِبِينَ. And we did not create the heavens and the earth and what lies between them for entertainment. We didn't do it to just have fun. Had we intended to do something for amusement, we would have done it on our own, had that been our purpose. لَوْ أَرَدْنَاهُ أَنْ يَتَّخِذَ لَهْوًا لَاتَّخَذْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا. We would have done it somewhere close to us. How can you imagine that in order for the Almighty to have fun, to have good time, He would have created this world wherein there is so much of misery, tragedies, tyranny? Is this what fun is all about? Can God, the mighty, the merciful, the wise, can He do something of that sort to just have good time? Not at all. Then we move on to verse 35, which is actually pointing at the purpose why the Almighty created this world. He says, Kullu nafsin za'iqatul maut. Every soul shall taste death. وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ fitna. And we are trying you through good and bad conditions to distinguish good from bad. وَإِلَيْنَا تُرْجَعُونَ. And towards us, you all are going to return. In other words, people are made to go through good times, people suffer through bad times, and it's all a trial and nothing else. And what the Almighty is doing as a consequence of this trial is that He is bringing out from people, individuals, their respective behaviors in response to the circumstances that they face. They all have been provided with the all important freedom. We all have the ability to, the independence of choosing to do whatever we want to. This is a very important decision of the Almighty regarding His creatures, that they be given limited freedom for them to decide whatever they want to, and that makes this whole experience, human experience, a very serious affair. It's not that we are here to just make money, have a good life, and just pop off one day, all of a sudden, and that would be just the end of it all. Not at all. All these facilities, energies, abilities, blessings are here for us to be able to live a life and then be able to do good, be able to exercise our judgment in favor of what the truth is, to prove, to show to the Almighty that the privilege of freedom that He had given us, we are using it properly, and then ultimately we are successful in the next life. We are informed about in this surah the story of the great man Ibrahim alayhi salam. God tells us that he was living with a nation who were polytheists, who worshipped idols. And in order to let these people know that what they were doing was unacceptable, it was something that was not explainable, which couldn't be defended. God says that Ibrahim decided and said to himself, وَالتَّاللَّهِ لَأَكِيدَنَّ أَصْنَامَكُمْ بَعْدَ أَن تُوَلُّوا مُدْبِرِينَ. He said to himself, and by God, I will surely plan against your idols after you've gone. So when people left the place where the idols, statues were placed, where they would pray to them in the temple, he went inside and he smashed them all into pieces, except for one, the biggest of them all. When people came back, they were shocked and they started shouting as to who was the one who was responsible for doing it. And some people said that there is this young man by the name of Abraham who used to talk ill of them. He must be the one who would have done it. So they said, they brought Abraham before a large number of people and they asked him, Anta falta haza bi alihatina. Ya Ibrahim, O Abraham, did you do it with our statues, with our gods? And he replied, he must have done it, this biggest of them all, with a dagger on his shoulders. Why are you asking me? Ask them. Ask them if they speak. And the Quran tells us, God tells us, who knows what's happening inside the hearts of individuals, that these people, they were embarrassed. They conversed privately and they said to each other, Innakum antum zalimun, you are unfair. He's right. What we are doing is absolutely rubbish, absurd, makes no sense. Yet, what happened was, and Abraham continued to say that, do you worship those who can neither benefit you nor harm you? Is that what you're doing? Shame on you, uffil lakum, walima ta'budun, and what you worship other than God. Lima ta'budun min dunillah. Afala ta'qilun, do you not use your intellect? Are you not using your senses? So the Quran tells us that despite the fact that they realize from inside that what he's saying is right and what we are doing is wrong. This ego, collective ego, overwhelmed them, and they decided that we will not accept what he's saying, and he has insulted our gods, and therefore he deserves to be punished. Qalu, and they said, harriqu, burn him, wansuru alihatakum, and help and support your gods, in kuntum fa'ilin, if you have the courage to do something. Qulna ya naru kuni bardan, and we said to the fire, be cold, cool down. Wassalaman ala Ibrahim, and give this message of peace to Abraham. So that's a very effective story which tells us that the people who do wrong, particularly in matters of religion, they know that what they're doing is wrong, but they're arrogant, inflexible. Finally, in this surah, we take verses 195 and 196, which tells us that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is informed that he doesn't need to go after these disbelievers because the nations about which God takes a decision that they are going to be destroyed, they will not believe. They go beyond limits. So when people become incorrigible, they go as far as the limits do not allow them to go. They are categorized as people who would never correct themselves, would go astray, and they'll ultimately be destroyed. It's based on God Almighty's policy of guidance and misguidance, which He implements on the basis of His policy of justice. He is absolutely fair in deciding His matters regarding guidance of humans. So the Almighty is telling the Prophet not to go after them, because once it is decided that these people are going to be destroyed on the basis of the Almighty's knowledge and wisdom, they will never incline to get back to faith, to accept the truth, until such time that Gog and Magog, Yajuj or Majuj, they would emerge. Hatta iza futihat Yajuj or Majuj wa hum min kulli hadamin yansilun. That is, this story of humans ignoring the Almighty's message is going to continue until such time that the end of the times would come close. And when the Almighty talks about the end of times, He talks about the important influx of Gog and Magog. They will come from all sides. They will be released and they will descend from every high point. What does it mean? Obviously, it's an expression which can only be understood properly and clearly when it's going to actually happen, where it seems that the two important cities, sacred cities of Mecca and Medina, they will be approached by these people. Gog and Magog are actually the progeny of the third son of Noah. Noah alayhi salam, he was survived by three sons. The fourth son was drowned. Ham, Sam, and Japheth. The nation that proceeded from Ham, they lived in Africa. Those who proceeded from Sam lived in Central Asia. And the nation that proceeded from Japheth had two sons, Gog and Magog. They were the ones who went to the northern part of the globe and then went to Europe, Australia, and one of the progeny of one of the other sons, the other son, went towards this eastern part of Asia, and these Chinese people and those who are similar to them. These two nations are Gogs and Magogs, and the Quran is telling us that come the day of judgment, when it is going to come close, they will be the ones who will dominate and would come from all sides. We then move on to the next pair of surahs, which is Surah Hajj 22 and Surah Mu'minun 23. We'll do some verses of Hajj in this episode, and we'll leave the next Surah Al-Mu'minun for the next one. The same themes are discussed in these two surahs as we find done in the other surahs: warning, good news, etc. Except for the fact that in the case of Surah Al-Hajj, the Almighty is warning the people of Quraysh in particular, mentioning their policies regarding the house of God. They were given the custody of this great treasure of God's mercy and spirituality, the center of spirituality for the entire world, but they did not behave properly, and therefore they are now being warned that this important position is going to be taken away from them. Surah Mu'minun, the next surah, is letting Muslims know that their success is now absolutely clear. It has been declared, and it's going to reach them very soon. Surah Al-Hajj begins by the description of the day of judgment. How are the events going to unfold? It says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, ittaqu rabbakum, fear your Lord. Inna zalzalat as-saati shay'un azim. Indeed, the tremor of the final hour will be a terrible thing. So don't take it lightly. It's going to be a very severe tremor. It's going to be a tremor that would be terrible. And then goes on to say, the day when you will see every nursing mother will be distracted from the child she will be nursing. Every pregnant female shall abort her burden, and you will see people as if they are drunk, but they won't be drunk. Instead, it would be because of God's punishment that would be very severe, and that will make them appear as if they are drunk. Verses 26 and 27 are telling the Prophet that these people of Mecca, they should be reminded of the occasion when we asked Abraham, that this house is now meant for our worship, and therefore it has to be prepared for it. وَإِذْ بَوَّأْنَا لِإِبْرَاهِيمَ مَكَانَ الْبَيْتِ, and mention, O Prophet, to these people when we designated for Abraham the site of the house. Allah tushrik bi shay'a, with the message that you will not ascribe partners with me at all, nobody. وَطَّهِّرْ بَيْتِيَا, and you clean my house. لِلطَّائِفِينَ وَالْقَائِمِينَ وَالرُّكَّعِ السُّجُودِ, you purify and clean this house for those who would do tawaf, circumambulate, those who would stand for prayer, those who would bow down in ruku and prostrate, do sujood. وَأَذِّنْ فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ, and invite, proclaim people to Hajj, the pilgrimage. They will come to you on foot and on every lean camel. يَأْتُوكَ رِجَالًا وَعَلَى كُلِّ ضَامِرٍ يَأْتِينَ مِنْ كُلِّ فَجٍّ عَمِيقٍ, they will come from every distant pass. So they were, the people of Mecca, they were reminded of the great past and the time when it all started. So they should know that this house has a purpose. It was built, constructed for people to converge to it, for worshipping God and one and the only God. The trouble is that these people of Mecca had reduced this great place of worship to a place where idols, statues were being worshipped. And they are being warned that if they are not going to bring the house back to the position where its original purpose is practically followed and served, they will be removed from this place and they will be replaced by other people. We move on to verse 37, where the Almighty, still describing Hajj, is talking about the different rituals that are required to be gone through in Hajj and their spirit. So the spirit was missing, and the Quran mentions that spirit for people to revive it. So he says in verse 37, when you sacrifice your animals, be sure لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا. Their meat and their blood doesn't reach God. وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. Instead, it is your piety that reaches Him. So be sure that when you are going through these rituals, you're doing them with their purpose, their spirit, with you while you are performing them, because these acts of worship without the real spirit would not carry any weight. Then we move on to verse 40, which is an important verse that's actually explaining as to why is it important that people who are religious should fight. This question arose because obviously when we talk about religion, we are talking about God, we are talking about piety, we are talking about human rights, we are talking about all the good things that you can think of. The fact that you, being religious, are also required to fight is something that would not normally come to a person who is looking forward to serving God. So why is it that God would like His servants to also fight against fellow humans? This was an important question that the Almighty responds in verse 40. He says, لَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ. Had not God gotten rid of some people through others, لَهُدِّمَتْ سَوَامِعُ وَبِيعٌ وَصَلَوَاتٌ وَمَسَاجِدُ. Then it would have happened that monasteries, churches, synagogues and mosques, they would have been demolished. Had it not been that God would have checked some people through others, those who were checked, who were fought against, they would have demolished places of worship, these monasteries, these churches, these synagogues and mosques, where the Almighty says the name of God is much mentioned. So in other words, God expects His servants to at times be prepared for fighting in His cause, because there are evil people in this world. They are evil because they have used their freedom incorrectly, and they are after every good thing in this life. So much so that they would also go as far as destroying the places of worship. And therefore God wants His good, noble, pious people to be prepared to defend the cause of God's message and His places of worship. The next verse 41 says that God likes those people who come to support Him and His cause. And He says in the previous verse, وَلَا يَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ. And God is most certainly going to support those people who are going to support Him, that is His cause. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. Most certainly God is exalted, powerful and mighty. These people who support God's cause are the ones which he says, Allazina immakkannahum fil ard. Those whom if we give authority, that is, if they are given to rule over a certain land, aqamus salat, they will establish prayer, wa'atavu zakat, and would give zakat, devise a system of receiving and paying zakat, wa'amaru bil maruf, and they will enjoin what is right, wa nahaw anil munkar, and would forbid what is wrong. Walillahi aqibatul umur, and to God belongs the outcome of all matters. That is, God-fearing people, when they get the opportunity, they exercise their freedom of ruling over territory, a population, exactly in accordance with the expectations of the Almighty. And this is what God promises is going to happen in the future as well, as indeed it happened when believers got the opportunity of controlling, invading, controlling and running the affairs of land, a population for a pretty long time. Then we move on to verse 46 where the Almighty says, Afalam yasiru fil ard, have they not travelled through the land? Fatakuna lahum qulubun, so that they should have hearts, yaqiluna biha, with which they would reason. Aw azanun yasmauna biha, or they would have had ears with which they would have listened carefully. فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ. This is because, it's not eyes that are blinded. وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ, but it is the hearts which get blinded. So, people who do not pay heed to the right message are the ones whose hearts are blinded. They cannot see what the truth is because of their wrong deeds. They've caused the purity of their heart to be damaged, to be affected, and therefore they cannot see the truth despite the fact that it's visible to them in the form of the destroyed populations which went through calamities, punishments from the Almighty because of their misdeeds. Finally, we come to the last verse of Surah Al-Hajj, verse 78, wherein the Almighty is addressing believers, Muslims, right at the time when they have been formed into an ummah and they're about to migrate to Medina. The Almighty says, وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. O believers, you fight and strive in the way of God, the way it's befitting. He deserves to be served and fought for as best as is possible. وَاجْتَبَاكُمْ, He has picked you, chosen you. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ, and He has kept nothing difficult in your religion. He has made for you nothing in your religion that is difficult. Millata abikum Ibrahim, it's the same path, the same tradition, the same religion as that of your father Ibrahim. Huwa sammakumul muslimin. He is the one who named you Muslims, people who have submitted themselves to the will of God. Min qablu wa fi haza, even before and now in this message too, you are called Muslims. Why? Why has this arrangement been made? لِيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ شَهِيدًا عَلَيْكُمْ, so that the messenger becomes an evidence, a testimony over you. He testifies God's message to you. وَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ, and you be an evidence, a witness for the rest of the mankind. On the one hand, the messenger has been a witness to you on behalf of God Almighty and His message, and now it is your task that you take this message and be witness for the rest of the mankind. That's what your job is. So, فَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ, then establish regular prayers, وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ, and give zakat, alms. Establish a system for it. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِاللَّهِ, and hold fast to the rope of God, this Quran. Huwa Mawlakum, God, He is your protector. فَنِعْمَ الْمَوْلَى وَنِعْمَ النَّصِيرُ, and what an excellent protector and what an excellent helper. May the Almighty enable us to understand His message and its obligations on us properly, and may He enable us to discharge those obligations as best as is possible for us.